And we should be live.
Oh no.
Welcome, lords and ladies. Another pamphlet has been published, this time from Dorne. Word of the adventures of the captain of the guard of Prince Doran Martell has spread across the realm. It is because of this pamphlet that we convene here today, that I summon our most distinguished lords and ladies to discuss this matter. Is this pamphlet treason, or is this literature to be supported by the crown? I request the indulgence of all my leal lords and ladies, and any other nobleman whose opinion is of virtue regarding this topic. I welcome you to invite anyone of interest to this discussion. Areo Hotah 2, what do we think?
68 out of 100. Passing if you want it to.
This
Alright.
pamphlet should be embraced by lords and small folk alike.
I liked it. I really liked it. Probably my second favorite one after Areo Hotah 1.
Yeah, I think it's
Interesting.
right in the middle, like average of the chapters so far.
I think out of the 5, it is the 4th best.
I think it's fantastic. I really, Areo Hotah is starting to feel like a real character, and I really like Darkstar. I like their confrontation. I really enjoyed it reading this chapter a lot.
Yeah, Preston is really, I think, doing a great job at fleshing out Areo Hotah, who was never an interesting character. Like Peter said it the best, like back in May or whatever, that the only interesting thing about Areo is where Areo is.
Mm. And
I
then
certainly
Portos.
agree. I certainly agree with that point that this chapter, I think it has a few maybe jarring stops to it, but overall it is, as far as the characters are concerned, with Darkstar and then in particular Arrow, it develops them well. It's much more enjoyable than the original Areo chapters for sure, as we see that character growth, and it feels logical and just satisfying to read in a lot of different ways. Look forward to talking about that.
I appreciate the way it's sort of like thematically consistent with like a feast chapter. That's how it feels to me. It's like, you know, this character thinking about morality, thinking about the effect on small folk, and the stakes are a bit lower. It's not dealing with, you know, Lannister versus Stark stuff, but it's more about the themes of the story.
Yeah, and you really can see like the deeper Dorn behind all this, you know, all
Mm-hmm.
this talk about justice and injustice, you know.
And
Yeah.
that's what makes Arrow fun, is that he's now realizing that he's just a pawn in this, like, in the Game of Thrones. Like, there's people using him. He's merely just this little player that no one actually cares about significantly. So now that he's coming to terms with his own agency, he's actually realizing that he impacts, you know, this massive complex political system that he's just beginning to understand. Even if his intelligence isn't as developed as other POVs, he's still very deliberate in his actions. So it's nice to see that with his new character.
And he's in a position of power now.
Yeah.
So I do wonder, what the way forward with him is. What's he gonna do with this knowledge and authority? He realizes that Doran is scheming, and he doesn't really like it.
Before we go to the future, should we maybe talk a bit about the past, like what's happened in this chapter?
Yeah. What do you suggest?
I don't know. I guess, do we need to do like a recap, like, or can we just assume everyone here has read it?
I can recap it really quickly if needed.
Go for
Do
it.
it.
Okay, so I even have my video script pulled up for the breakdown, but basically they're traveling. Obar is mortally wounded and not really in command. Desi Aldalt's the one who's actually doing stuff. Then people talk. We're riding to High Hermitage. People talk. Arrow reflects. There's this thing with his horse that we could talk about. He kind of reflects on himself, thinks about morality, as we said. And then the people talk about how when they were fought the Lannisters, that they did horribly. The Lannisters killed more people despite being outnumbered. The Scrape Sword survived. And then there's a few other bits of dialogue. Oh, about half of their party died. They see a scout, but they're not able to catch him. He goes up to High Hermitage, and then they camp at the base of the castle. Uh, that morning, down comes a 11-year-old girl on a horse that's like, Darkstar only. Darkstar wants to talk to you, but won't talk to Dalt. So Hotah goes, since Obar is mortally wounded. Hotah goes. They have a really fun repartee, you could say. They talk quite a bit. Darkstar is very braggadocious, makes a lot of big claims that he has the ability to basically cause a Dornish civil war just by sending a bunch of ravens, and that he's got allies everywhere, and that John Con's landed, and he mentions the White Raven subplot, and then Hotah's like, well, dang. So Darkstar demands that they surrender to him, otherwise he'll tear Dorne apart. And Hotah's kind of perplexed, so he goes down, he tells Obara. Obara calls him out, says he's bluffing, but Obara dies, supposedly, before the morning. So then Hotah's in command now, and he orders them to surrender. Everyone's detained, and Darkstar's like, psych, I was bluffing. I don't have any of that stuff. I've got 4 guys and 1 raven, and that raven's the White Raven. I've got no allies. The only thing that I told you was true, that I was framed for the killing of Marcella. And then Hotah figures out that there's all this scheming going on, and it's like, well, where's the real Marcella? And ends the question asking the line, where do septas go? So that's the recap.
That was efficient.
That was
Very
excellent.
good.
So I say we go around. Favorite thing about the chapter, and then we'll go and do some. And then we'll do some criticism. So I'll say probably my favorite thing would be probably a conversation just between Areo and Darkstar. Darkstar's personality really comes out, where he's kind of braggadocious and he likes talking about himself and how good he is and all of that. They feel like real characters, and Areo's his stubborn, kind of dull personality, but starting to grow a little bit into the situation, like feeling those two talk to each other, and actually having Areo accuse Darkstar of murder, of a murder he did, is that's brilliant.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think that I really enjoyed the development between Ari Hotah and Darkstar and even Denzel. I think we learned a lot about these characters and where they're coming from this, and I like that Obara, who's like the most hot-headed person on this whole Areo Hotah adventure, is in the end right about this, about what's going on. She's right, and Areo is wrong. He made a mistake, at least from as far as his command was, but he didn't understand the situation. So I like how it all turns out. But this looks like it has caused a problem for Martell master plan. So I think the Martell master plan would be for Darkstar to be killed, and that's the expectation. And now we have to. He'll have to alter his plan. Doran has to alter his plan, in some way, once he finds out about this.
Well, it's hard to say what Doran's plan is. Like, who the fuck even knows? I'm a huge sucker for thematics, so like, clearly, I would be biased towards the pros of the, shit. Like the ghosts. I like the ghosts. Areo being haunted by the people they had slaughtered, and Areo is feeling really guilty, and it also ties to the horse thing Time was talking about. Like, he has this horse that used to belong to Balon, who got killed off in the last chapter, and the horse's name is Mirror, and Areo can see his reflection in the horse's eyes, and he has this mantra like, "Have I always been ugly?" You know,
That was
and
good. Him
yeah,
thinking about if
and
he's
and
ugly or
and
not.
just also like the burial of sorts, I suppose. Like that was repeated, like in the beginning of the chapter, and then again at the end of the chapter. It's kind of like this George anti-war message, like being channeled through Preston. Preston, I like that stuff.
I feel the second burial could have been a little bit longer. Obara's death just sort of appears and then it's just on to the next thing.
And we can talk about Obar's death, but I would like to first say that Varv made a fun little point about no one really knows what Doran's doing, and that gave me like Ford Planned It All vibes because we were talking about Westworld, and Preston has that thing that he says in his Westworld watches, Ford Planned It All, because at a point, if you make Doran like a mystery box where he just plans whatever, it does kind of get annoying where, oh, he's a smart guy that just planned everything out, and we don't know what he's planned. I find that annoying and personally some form of lazy writing, but I do have faith that Preston has poured a lot of thought into the Dornish master plan, obviously, and has a clear plan in mind. So that kind of takes care of that criticism for me.
And we sort of get a peek, right, at what Doran might have intended for this situation when Darkstar says, yeah, like he's supposed to like beat Areo Hotah, and that will be another like reason why Darkstar gets blamed for everything. Like that contributes to Doran's, story about Darkstar. So that's us already kind of breaking away from Doran's plan. So we have a hint that this is what Doran intended. This is not what's happening because Areo Hotah went off script.
Yeah, and that's interesting. But I wanted to talk about my favorite part of the chapter.
Oh yeah.
And Varv did steal some of my thunder because I know everyone likes the Darkstar Hotah interaction on the bridge. That was amazing. But I really liked the horse and the mirror and all the reflection symbolism. Even sort of with the opening line where the obelisk drank the morning light, you get this idea of like the contrast of the darkness kind of absorbing the light, and then that kind of comes back with Darkstar, sure, but also the ideas of reflection. Now, I really like horses. They're a nice bit of world building in Aswaf. I'm not a horse person in real life. I'm just saying the way like sand steeds are different than actual horses. So we see that here and how it's kind of difficult and not responsive to Hotah. But the whole mirror thing, it's at the beginning of the chapter he thinks that he looks like a stranger and also ponders about how he's never really looked at his reflection before. The line almost seemed directly pulled from Divergent, so I was wondering if one of the editors snuck that in there. It was kind of funny. But he had
I
never
snuck that in there, and I haven't seen Divergence, so you're wrong.
it sounds so much like a line from Divergent. I know I sent the screenshot to you. But it's just kind of funny. It is kind of a common trope, but I think it was employed well here because he thinks that he's a stranger. And while looking in a horse's eye, we have a horse named Stranger, and Stranger is the bringer of death, and that's kind of what Hotah is seeing himself as. He's this outsider that people are using as a pawn to bring death to others. And it's just a really neat little, point. Then at the end, he thinks, "Was I always ugly?" He's not thinking about how he doesn't recognize his own reflection. He's thinking about how he doesn't like the way it looks. That means that he acknowledges himself. He acknowledges his own agency. He actually, I think it's beautiful character growth. He realizes that he's a person that can actually do things. He's in that leadership position. He is the one making the decisions. So I really like that part of the chapter. But enough of me.
Otter's turn.
Yeah, sure, I can jump in. Yeah, it's just fun to see him kind of break free of his programming sort of late in the chapter when he, thinks his usual protect, serve, obey mantra and then sort of rejects it. That's satisfying to me that we kind of see him have problems with that mantra and what it implies over the course of the previous Hotah chapter that we did. And then this is him sort of paying that off and being like, actually, I've taken this too far. Like, I'm done. And I think that does tie into the reflection and the horse mirror stuff because he sort of realizes how old he is, looking at his gray eyebrows and stuff like that. And we saw him be, complaining about it being physically weaker, not able to fight the way he used to be. So he no longer fits in this role as just a servant, just a fighter. And so part of it is that if he can't just be that anymore, if he's no longer adequate at that, he needs to become something else. And he realizes he wants to become something else. So that all ties in together. I like it. I think I'm happy for Hotah kind of growing.
Barristan should probably take notes.
Yeah, Barristan, unfortunately, I don't think is going to make this breakthrough that Hotah has made in his mind. I think
Definitely
he's too
not.
far gone.
I think a good thing to go over next, Captain Time, you had like a survey or something that you did about people's thoughts. If you wanted to go over the results of that.
Yes, there are a lot of results in it.
Could you
but
send
I
us
can,
the highlights?
yeah, I will just narrate for a little bit. Stop me when I get too far, but kind of going over the broad strokes of what the responses are. About 60% of respondents have said that they received the chapter in a generally positive light, and no one seemed overly negative or, to contrast, overwhelmingly positive about it. Everyone was generally happy with it in some extent. The average rating out of 5 seems to be about a 3.7, 3.8, which is nice. It's a little lower than previous chapters, but it's still well within the average range. And that's what most people said. I had a question about that as well, how it stacks up compared to other chapters. 40% saying that it was average, the middle. We've had 5 chapters, 2 better, 2 worse. Interestingly, 23% said that this is the worst chapter of the project thus far, and no one said that it's the best, though some people said it was second best, about 18%. One of the things that remains most controversial is like how it compares to Martin's style of writing. 43% saying that it's very, very similar to Martin's style of writing, while about 48% say that it's not really the same thing. It has resemblance to Martin's style in prose, but it's going off in its own direction, which is interesting. Obara's death, which I do want to talk about, is fairly controversial. About 33% didn't really care. About another third thought it made sense as a logical continuation. And then the other third had a wide variety of thoughts, thinking that it wasn't in character, or that she's not confirmed dead, or that it shouldn't have happened for other reasons, or that it happened too quickly. But Areo was very positively received overall. 81% of people thought he was in character, developed well, grew a lot, really liked that. About 60 people thought that Darkstar was portrayed really, really well, with an additional 20% liking the character, though thinking it was kind of a mischaracterization. So overall, about 3/4 of fandom really enjoyed the way Darkstar was portrayed. The pacing also was well agreed on. People said that about 62% of the people said that pacing of the chapter was where it should have been, which is nice because pacing has been a big point of feedback for the past few chapters. And this one did feel well paced. Then there's a bunch of other questions that are like short responses that I can bring up as needed, but they're, people writing paragraphs about their feedback. So those were kind of the main questions and how people thought about the performance of the chapter.
I love also that it's a shorter chapter, especially after Elaine. Oh my god.
Yes, it was the second shortest chapter overall. It was a page shorter than Areo. It was a page shorter than Areo 1 and 3 pages longer than Danny 1. If I recall correctly. Danny 1 being the shortest chapter.
So
This one.
you mentioned like short response questions. Did you ask really quickly about what people thought happened to Obara? Was that one of the questions?
No,
That's
but
the poll I want to see.
I had a blank space in the Obara for people to fill in what they thought. Someone said not sure. Someone said she should have died slower. Someone said she should have died slower.
I mean, let's cut to the chase.
Said,
people think that Hotah killed her.
There are people that think Hotah killed her. I saw that question in the chat, but I'm not seeing like. There's people who are saying she's not confirmed dead, and there's someone who thought she was like moved in the middle of the night somehow and body swapped or something.
I didn't think there was any
I don't-
ambiguity. Like,
Yeah, I don't
Was it-
understand the ambiguity there.
it's like he put like there was like a funeral.
Well, I mean,
Nah, we didn't see
that's-
the body though.
This is like so typical
We
fandom.
did
Like
see
that.
the body.
It's just
No,
that there's
no,
a
but-
time skip. Like he comes back, and then it's a very Obara's like Darkstar's bluffing, don't believe him. And then there's like one sentence, and it's like, in the morning, Obara was dead.
Yeah,
I don't
didn't
feel
like
like
that.
that lends itself towards ambiguity, but yeah, I didn't like it either because
Preston
it's kind
comes
of
in
jarring.
saying he buried a body, but whose body? Was it Obara's? We don't know.
Someone post a link to the thing. I want to read this little bit.
No, but seriously, if
I'll
we
get the
go with
screenshot
the,
pulled up
if we
here.
go with the idea that Areo killed him, like that would be so lame.
That
Because if a POV kills a person and they never think about it, that's not like good mystery writing. That's just bad writing. They're like the POV's motivation doesn't come into it.
I didn't even think there was any ambiguity whatsoever. I don't understand why
Okay.
people think that there would be.
I will read it out loud. So, Obara is calling out Darkstar's bluff. Hotah, who believes the bluff, is kind of arguing back. And then Obara says, "You are dismissed," the Sand Snake said. With that, the Knight of Lemonwood escorted Hotah from the tent. He thinks, obey, serve, protect. No, choose. The next morning, Lady Obarasand was dead. Areo Hotah stacked a cairn atop her body himself. A burial of sorts, he supposed. And that's it. I don't
Yeah,
see
so-
ambiguity there. Where's the
I
ambiguity?
don't see it either. I think just
The
people. not
motivation
Just
for
wanting
seems
him
dead
to
to me.
kill Obara is clear, right? Like,
Yeah, we see.
Hotah
Yes.
doesn't want Obara making decisions anymore because they lead to war, and that's what she wants: war.
It is
Which
very
is-
possible Hotah killed Obara, and that is a fun theory. But I don't see basis for believing that Obara survived.
Oh, I agree.
It's pretty
I'm-
clear
oh,
that she's
the-
dead.
Yeah, like I don't. I think like if we wanted to have some ambiguity, you could like add like a sentence or two about like him thinking about what he has to do that night, and then he woke up regretting or some like something like that. Like you could make it, but I just don't see it at all.
The possibility lies within that ambiguity and the fact that what we know is that Hotah leaves the tent and he thinks, screw all these vows I've sworn. I need to choose in what I believe in.
Mhm.
And then he buries Obara. So I mean, it's possible. And Preston likes the mind game stuff. He likes the
Mhm.
so he might be putting that in there, but it could just be a dumb theory. I like the idea. I like the ambiguity. It's one of those things that might be better if it was actually never resolved, or maybe it was hinted at later in Areo chapters that he has like some guilt about killing someone, and we have to be like, wait a second, did he actually do that? That's what I like to see.
I think the door's open for that. I agree with.
Yeah. Okay. Future Areo chapters, please put stuff in there. Put that theme in there. Leave that door open. Don't close it on us.
But don't confirm it either.
Yeah. Don't confirm it, but don't
Let
deny
it just sit.
hint at it, but never in a way that provides evidence.
Martin likes to leave
Systematically.
certain things in a mystery, so that it would be fitting that we never get a clear answer. But it would be nice to see. I mean, if Areo feels guilty about something involving Obara, we don't. Yeah, we could put that in there without ever saying flatly one way or the other that he killed her. So we could leave that open till the end.
Then again, if people want to confirm it in their drafts, like they're totally welcome to. Like Preston's gonna do whatever he wants anyway.
Yeah, but it's really good idea, and I'd love to see more of it. I mean, as I've said, I thought a few of the drafts were better than the final product. I think that I can keep getting joy from the draft. So if that's something I see in the draft, it's still within the same canon.
Uh,
Should we discuss if Obara should or should not have died? I remember
Yes,
a lot of
please.
people were talking about way back when. I think we discussed it in the Areo. In a previous podcast, we talked about this
We did.
exact thing. Although even though I was the one that said it, I forget actually what the exact arguments were that she still has an arc to go through.
So the idea being, in my mind, that Obara should not have died because the purpose of her death seems to be some point of. Correct me if I'm wrong when I'm done talking, but the purpose of her death seems to be pointing at the idea that like war is bad. I know that's kind of a shallow point, but working into that angle of ASWAF, I think that message could have achieved so much better if she remained mortally wounded or in some coma for the rest of the story, maybe even dying at the end. If she just keeps getting ravens of how her family is falling apart, of how Ariane and Doran's scheming is destroying them, how all the Sand Snakes end up dying, you know, how Doran goes into civil war or loses to something, or wherever the Dornish plan goes, however it crashes and burns, if she's forced to see that when she has no agency, because the Sand Snakes are very much about aggressive, outgoing, no consideration for risk, no throwing caution to the wind, doing whatever. If Obara is forcefully put in a position where she can't do any of that, she just has to lay in bed, I think that can illustrate the point so much better, where she has to come to terms with how contradictory and how immoral all of the decisions and how petty revenge is. It can just highlight all the points so much better than just having her die. Because if she dies, then there's never really that contradiction there to highlight because she's dead. She can't think about it. But
So very
that's
quickly,
my.
do you want sort of like a Jamie losing his hand moment and arc for Obara, like having to change and
Yes.
like
Yeah, being confronted with it instead of just dying to it.
okay.
I think that I mean, heck, what about like an epilogue to The Winds of or even A Dream of Spring? That's Obara's POV and she dies bedridden and it's just an essay on human morality and it's just Obara internally reflecting. There's no dialogue. I mean, I don't know. That's a little more experimental modern
I feel
writing.
like
I will
her-
sort
I
of
would
say that we already kind of have Arya as this like revenge character
Yeah.
POV, and I don't mind cleaning up a few characters when we're trying to like not have it be 4 more books and have it only be 2 more books. But I absolutely understand what you mean. Like that would thematically be cool.
Yeah, and even if the point is to thin out the characters, have her get taken away and lay in some citadel somewhere, or just mention that she's lying in a bed for the next few years, and don't
Obara
say
the
anything
grave
more about
digger.
it. Yeah, like something like
Yeah.
that.
Do,
That's
do we
what.
do we like Obara? Like, how much did we really
Oh,
see of
yeah.
her before? Like,
A fair bit. I mean, she was like our first Sand Snake in the first Areo chapter. I think she was the
Mhm.
first one to appear, and
threatens
got a
to shove
very,
his axe up something.
what?
She threatens to shove his axe up something when he won't let
Yeah.
her in to see Doran.
Maybe.
Yeah, she's fun.
So, comment from the chat. It's also about how the story moves to Old Town, which Preston seems to want to do. It would be way more organic if Obara, whose ambiguous Old Town backstory by itself demands some sort of resolution, is the character who dragged the story in that direction. So Obara should drag the story towards Old Town. Instead, Preston wants Areo's story to be about Marcella.
Yeah, like that seems contrived. I hate to say it, but I'm not like a big Obara fan either. It's just even in ASWAF, as much as people like to think there's pointless character death, there really isn't. Like all characters die in a way that illustrates something, even if it is unexpected to the reader. Obara's death doesn't really illustrate anything to me, at least nothing new. And that's why I didn't like it.
Well, she did die, like, spiteful and hateful and without learning anything. And there's sort of a lesson in and of itself in
But
that
then
idea.
then again, like she was right to the last moment. You know, she was
Yeah.
making the right call in this chapter.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, maybe.
Now Ario's a prisoner because he didn't listen to her. So yeah, that will he'll at least be thinking to himself, no matter where he goes from here, like I should have listened to Obara. At least that thought will go through his head.
Yeah, put that anti-war message in your pipe and smoke it.
But that's even what you're saying there is just that's all. Those are all plot reasons. That's not a character reason.
I get what you're saying.
If you're killing a character for plot reasons, that's a contrivance. And I'm not like I know I'm really harping on this, and that's because I really didn't like it. But it's not the biggest issue ever. I still think it's a pretty big issue though with the chapter. Again, I had this nice little summary that I wrote, or in my opinion, it's nice, of what I think of the chapter as a whole. And let me just read it out. To me, the chapter is well written, except for a few glaring typos, smooth except for one jarring closing line, and develops its characters well, except for Obara, who dies for seemingly no reason. That's kind of how I feel. Like there's these outliers in the chapter that seem to not fit into the themes or tones of it, and that therefore just kind of bring it down or confuse me when I'm reading it. I might be missing stuff, but that's the vibe I got.
In the chat, we're getting quite a fair bit of Obara love. Everyone seems to like her, and I agree with them. Pieces says that Obara's death is us abandoning Doran's plan for her, which I was hoping would pay off with the host in the Boneway or something. I'm trying to remember again, is there a host in the Boneway? I remember reading about this a while ago, reaching a conclusion then forgetting. Any other final Obara thoughts before we move on to the next topic?
Was there like some kind of confirmation that the story was supposed to move to Old Town? Like Areo was supposed to go there? Like what was that based on? Can someone refresh me?
We can use this as a transition to talk about the closing line, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah, let me.
What do we think about where do Septus go?
I said that it was, I think, as subtle as a brick in the face, because
Yep.
it's and that's been the thing with these lines, and we've talked about this before, paralleling characters that don't have any thematic ties simply for the sake of parallel. Tyrion and Arrow, as far as I'm aware, as characters do not have any thematic relations. They don't even have thematic contrast, which would be cool. They just don't have anything in common. I was thinking for POVs that Arrow overlaps with, people like Melisandre or Davos, because Arrow's POVs are very much now in the Preston canon about coming to terms with the fact that he has agency despite the fact that he's being used in a system much larger than himself. And that's what Davos's POVs are now about in some interpretations, and that's what Melisandre is about. Though the system's magic, not political there. Or it could even be something like Jaime, like we had said, where he has to, flip his character completely around because of external circumstances. Or Sansa, for the same reason. There's so many POVs that have thematic ties to Arrow, but
Also
Arrow doesn't.
Barristan, I would argue.
Barristan would be another great
Definitely.
one because they have so much in common. But Tyrion is a broken man who hates life, and it's a great POV. It has its beautiful themes. It's about family and, the bitterness that comes with realizing that he may never be loved again. Arrow doesn't have any of those themes. So the parallel seems, I don't know, pointless. I hate to use that word, but I don't.
Well, they're both
see
ugly.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good point. So I guess, screw it. I guess that makes sense, and I guess it means whores go to Old Town. I really don't know.
Horse do go to Old Town. It is known.
It is known.
I'm sort of surprised that we're maybe assuming that that's where Marcella is and has been taken, because I mean, I kind of believe Darkstar when he says, yeah, I mean, Doran still has Marcella. Why would he let her go? Unless he sent her to Old Town under his, supervision.
The Old Town thing
Why would he do that?
was partially about Obara. She's like in the very first Areo Hotah chapter, she says she wants to attack Old Town in revenge for Oberyn Martell. When he died, she said, we'll go sack Old Town. And it's kind of out of nowhere. And then she's also geologically moving that way.
She does have to get in line because, Euron's already doing that.
And that's the other part of
Yeah,
the argument, is
Sam.
that everyone's at Old Town. And so, like, Euron's attacking, plus there's the High Towers there. There's, like, Reach, there's, the Brave Companions might be there, Sam's there, like Obara could, I mean, in George's story, Obara could show up, with a bunch of Dornish people and trying to sack the place. Like, everything's going to go on at Old Town, so...
And I therefore have a thought that perhaps the closing line is an obvious misdirect, because Preston is one for mystery and clouding things. The line, where do septas go, seems to be so obviously Old Town that I feel like it must mean something else, or that Hotah's thought process is mistaken. I remember reading something with, I think Farv had said, maybe it was Cash, but there was something about what Preston had meant with him being right for the wrong reason. I don't remember. Can someone fill me in on that?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, I'll find it when someone else is talking, but I think the line might be some form of misdirect.
Yeah, I'm
Whether-
not sure, because like, although Preston is Preston and likes mystery and misdirect, I'm not like entirely convinced he's all that good at actually writing that kind of thing. It seems to me that a lot of stuff is being explicitly stated in like all the
Yeah.
chapters, and people just seem to be correct about them. Like in Areo 1, Obara had this whole contrived logical exercise about like Lady Nim being on the way to Old Town, and then Areo kind of just accepts that logic and seems that it's true. And also in Dany 1, there was like the main crone was dropping some exposition on Dany, and Dany just believes it, and apparently it's true.
Well, George is no stranger to exposition drops, but I kind of get what you're saying.
The Lady Nim thing was him being mistaken, right? He was confused. That part wasn't true, I think.
Where's Lady Nim? Where's Lady Nim?
I don't remember it. So
I thought was like Obara thought that it was the septa was going to be Lady Nim or Tyene or something like that, but it was actually talking about Marcella and her septa.
Yeah, so where do septas go about Eglantine or Tyene? What do you think? Because I think it's Tyene, because there's an odd inclusion of Hotah remembering Tyene in this chapter. When the little girl giggles, he remembers Tyene's giggle. It seems to be there simply because, for that reason, but I could be mistaken.
I think that Tyene giggle is about Tyene saying Darkstar isn't guilty, right?
That's probably a more likely possibility. In all seriousness, I just really hadn't considered that.
Back in the Ice and Fire chapter, like Tyene is the one who says Darkstar did it. Sure, well, that's just blame Darkstar.
Yeah,
and that's what
she's
kind of a
like-
hint Preston takes to mean like the Sand Snakes all think the idea that Darkstar did this is laughable, So that tells us what they think of Darkstar's personality, that he isn't really one to do this, and they actually think the idea is funny. So that's a springboard Preston used to say, actually, Darkstar is not the one who maimed Marcella. It was someone else. He's innocent.
So I think on to the next subject. I have a comment from Egon is in the chat. He says he would prefer if Areo to never have another POV chapter now that he has found his own will. That is my opinion. In my opinion, it better conveys his newfound freedom as we can no longer peer into his mind.
That's
You sold
fucking
me.
meta.
You sold me. No,
I don't mind it.
I'm sold.
I actually
up.
disagree.
he
Like,
keeps-
I kind
I
of
think
want to
that's
see.
weird.
I kind of want to see like the next Areo chapter, like have titled Areo Hotah and him and Darkstar being buddy cops roaming around Dorne.
Yeah, definitely.
That's good too.
Like that. That's how George usually depicts people finding their selves and their own free will. He just renames the chapter next time over to their like actual birth name.
You did it. You graduated to becoming a person. Congratulations.
Yay!
I will say also, like as a more minor point, but George loves having these chapters where people find themselves in prison, and so it's an opportunity with Hotah to do that. He finds himself in prison. We have a Davos style chapter. So that
what
would
do we
feel
think
very
is gonna-
Esquire.
What do we think is gonna happen with that anyway? Like him being imprisoned now.
Is he really in prison?
He's become a prisoner. Who knows exactly what the facilities are there?
He's
I
more
mean, he
like a
outnumbers
hostage,
them
it seems.
still, don't they? Like, Darkstar just has a bunch of little girls and stuff.
He's got 4 guys.
He's only got him and Desiel Dolt, right? Everyone else left.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
I think I forgot. I missed that part.
I got the impression it was just him and Dalt. That's
Yeah,
But it's not-
he watches them all leave with the horses and stuff.
Yeah, but they may have a fighting chance because it's not night yet. You know, Darkstar is deadliest by moonlight
True.
or whatever.
Oh, be quiet. No. We could talk about Darkstar more since that would be a
I
good
would think
transition.
probably just the future. Where would you have Areo Hotah go now? My thoughts are him, Darkstar team up as buddy cop in Dorne and mess up all of Dorne's master plans. Like we're thinking,
Yes, Jamie and Bronn, but just have it be Areo and Darkstar. I really
Yeah.
like that.
and then we have a weird scene where Areo gets an erection in a jail cell, and then the poison comes in.
That's from the
God.
TV show.
That's from season 5. It's a really bad scene. Did you guys all forget it?
Maybe if we
I
have,
have not seen this show.
No, you didn't miss much on that scene. Jesus Christ. Alright. Where do you guys think Areo is going next?
The jail.
like probably
like-
like in the next chapter is probably not gonna go much of anywhere. Like it's probably gonna be very dialogue heavy, I think. Like negotiating with Darkstar, finding a way to escape, that kind of thing. Like I don't think he's just gonna teleport somewhere.
I think that he's a hostage now, so he's a political bargaining chip. Given how we like see him treated and what, he's not a prisoner. So
But he's not
I
a very
think
good hostage though. Like
he's not a very good hostage, but he's something. Darkstar needs anything he can get. So
But-
I think we'll have a chapter of him reflecting in prison, and then he'll get exchanged or used for something.
But I believe it was Tywin in A Clash of Kings that said that Doran is a sentimental man, so maybe Darkstar believes that.
I kind of think that Darkstar has sort of convinced Hotah and like brought Hotah around to not wanting to be Doran's pawn, and so there is a possibility that in the future Darkstar will be able to kind of use Hotah in the capacity of a spy. Like, send him to do something. Everyone thinks, oh, Hotah is still doing Doran's bidding, but actually he's been turned to do what Darkstar wants.
Dark side.
He's gonna be on Team Darkstar, I think. Like he
Yeah, I
he
don't think
knows
he's gonna
that Doran
escape.
is lying now.
Yeah.
Is Darkstar going to steal Dawn?
Yeah, they're going.
Dark Star is going to be the new Sword of the Morning.
Sort of the evening.
Yeah, that's step
Sword of the
one.
Night.
That's step one of their buddy cop adventure. They gotta go. They gotta go to Starfall. Talk about Ashara for a little bit, and Ned and those adventures, and then head back to Sunspear.
Yeah, I don't have as big visions of Hotah. Like, I do think he's growing as a character and will continue to grow, but I don't think that he's going to be a much more major character. But maybe he could. Preston does seem to like him and is doing a lot of fun stuff with him.
I think just because of Preston's Dawn bias, he's gonna be a major character.
Yeah. But every
And,
chapter in the project's been about Dorn so far, it feels like. I know that's not true, but
I actually have this tinfoil theory about where do Septus go. That like it's actually foreshadowing for Areo killing Doran in the end of this book. That he's like experiencing the Dance with Dragons Tyrion arc in reverse, sort
Now
of.
you're talking
And
about.
and it like ends up with him killing Doran, who is sort of a father figure in a sense, you know.
Mhm. That's interesting.
Does anyone think that Darkstar, after stealing Dawn, would try to go to fake Aegon and become a Kingsguard and sort of like being a fake Arthur Dane to a fake Aegon?
to me it seems like he believes the Beware John, like that the Raven, the Beware John
Hmm.
Raven. So I think that's Preston inserting that as a reason why Darkstar is not going to do that. That's my interpretation. I think it would fit in character, which is why we have the White Raven plot come and keep that from happening.
But by the way, about the Raven, I really liked when Darkstar said that whatever was his cousin's name, anyway, the lady, whatever, that he interpreted the Raven as warning him off John. Like that's great, you know, to have like different interpretations of the same message, and that's probably gonna keep reverberating throughout the story.
I really like the Beware John.
Mhm.
The White Raven subplot is so much fun.
Although the
That's
like how frantic Sam must have been to put this impression of Beware John in all these ravens.
Well, it's a Fist of the First Man parallel, obviously, so very much so.
Well, and also, we were
It's-
told that the ravens copy each other, so you could have just taught one raven, and the raven just kept saying it, and the other ravens copied that one.
And depending on what theories or what Preston believes, the intelligence and collective thoughts of White Ravens may be even more expansive than we're initially led to believe. I just want to say that the White Raven subplot is amazing, and it's the sort of thing that we'd only get in a fanfic written by Preston Jacobs. I just really enjoy it.
He loves the confusion. Everyone taking some different implication from it.
Yeah, but it meaning something plot altering and still very, like, it meaning something significant in every misinterpretation.
Mhm.
Even in these upcoming 3 chapters that we just got, every time it impacts the story. It's fun, it's neat, and it's original. Now we're all silent. So
I had my mic muted. A pretty minor thing was
Okay.
the number of horses. I might be wrong about this, but don't horses outnumber knights like 2 or 3 to 1 in medieval times? Isn't that just not like unusual?
What sort of knights? Horses are really expensive.
Yeah, horses are really expensive. That's like very implausible to me. Like obviously I haven't looked into that preemptively,
If
but
I remember,
no, I don't think so.
I want to check because this sounds familiar with like each knight having a few horses. I just think the fact that they're all moving with all of them, but I could be mistaken.
Yeah, well, I think
Because
you only like
horses-
ride one or two at a time. They need time to recover. They also have to carry your bags and your gear and stuff. And so I think the general idea is
Yeah.
that you have a whole bunch of them, and that like twice as many horses as riders is actually not unusual. And the other thing that in George, um, this kind of brings up sort of the Battle of Blood Hannibal plans that Preston has coming up, is that there's no like livestock on campaign when people are like going around. Wasn't that a very common thing that you would bring animals and goats and stuff to slaughter? I mean, just food that walks with you. I'm pretty sure that was a big thing, and I don't see George or Preston doing that.
Well, they just steal from the small folk wherever they go, so they don't need to take anything with them.
That's foraging for you.
Oh yeah.
Mm. Yeah, it's not stealing. It's living off the land.
Nature intended.
Aegon says that Darkstar will probably want to be a prince/ruler of his own kingdom. Why not?
I don't know. He doesn't seem like the war making type. He's a contrast to the Sand Snakes. He's good to his people. He's not trying to start a war, even though he bluffed that he would.
Yeah, ends justify the means sort of stuff.
Alright, I think,
I
go on.
I mean, like the implication I took was that he didn't actually have allies positioned ready to strike and create a civil war. Like that was all BS, because he wouldn't actually do something like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that like his personality, that he's this kind of a cocksure asshole, is a bit of a misdirect in itself. You know, at least in the Preston version, because
Yeah,
like he's cut out to be a good guy, actually.
he acts that way for the ladies.
Sure.
I'm thinking we're at the... Oh, we're only at an hour. Okay, that's not bad. I'm gonna throw out the opportunity to anyone in the audience if they want to stop on in. If anybody has any ideas, message me in the chat if you guys have any anything you want us to talk about, or if you guys want to join us, because we have 6 people listening, and the chat's actually quite active.
Yeah.
Yeah. What other stuff should we talk about?
I have a pet theory, but we don't have to
Well,
get to it now.
I have a criticism. I know it's in Areo Hotah's character not to like really be skeptical of what Darkstar was saying, but should someone have been more skeptical of what Darkstar was saying, in the sense like should have said something like asked to see these men that he claims to have in his castle, or is that something that should have been asked, like why no one why I mean if Areo had asked Darkstar, can I see these men, or can I see your force, or anything like that? What would Darkstar have said in that situation?
Okay, this ties into my pet theory. So
Okay.
on page 10, if you have the envoy open, there's a little line where Hotah looks up at the battlements and then looks away.
Okay.
So my pet theory is that Hotah already kind of got the idea, or he maybe glanced and saw a child up there and noticed at that close range that it was a child and wasn't real. And so Hotah kind of knows, or at least has a good idea, that Darkstar is bluffing even then.
This is
Yeah.
interesting.
He also doesn't act that surprised the way Desiel Dalt does when they go in.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but to this point about being skeptical about Darkstar's bluffing, actually it's interesting because they go through his lands and they see that like the lands are not doing all that good. Like the farms are pretty meager, and Areo even thinks that they're probably not being taxed because they have basically nothing to tax. So if a lord's lands don't yield any tax revenue, how are they gonna like pay for hosts? You know, so it's kind of a no-brainer in hindsight that Darkstar wouldn't have all that many men in his castle.
There's a little tiny House of Red Door reference in there. Just a stone tower with lime trees outside. You guys want to talk about Darkstar's bluff? I feel it was a bit weak.
Sure. I think it's weak, but it works because of the circumstances, and also Darkstar was sort of backed into a corner there. Either he's going to surrender or he's going to Hail Mary this bluff, and you know he has the confidence to sort of try to pull it off. He's got no allies, no men, no resources, so he tries it, and because Obara dies, and because you know Hotah is Hotah, it actually works. Maybe it is
Yeah,
a little contrived, but I think it works.
I like
I
my
Yeah,
think it's
interpretation that Hotah knows that he's bluffing and he surrenders anyway.
but,
I
but
think
that
that
as I
makes
doesn't.
see it,
sense.
it's kind of the whole point that it's a really weak bluff, because it's like this characterizing moment for Darkstar. The other balls of the lie is like the whole point, and at the same time, Darkstar is like giving shit to Areo for lying, you know, and like everything he says is bullshit.
And like the reader can clearly see that it's a bluff. That was the impression I had, where we know more than the POV in this case. Like, especially Hotah specifically noting the number of archers on the tower and it being single digits. That seems to be a way to like tell the reader that something's going on here, as well as just Darkstar's claims of being very grandiose. It just I I got that impression that this bluff is obviously that it's a bluff, and yet because of who Hotah is, it works. Be it Hotah knows or that he's just not intelligent enough.
Or that he's choosing to
Yeah,
be bluffed.
that's what I said. Either that he knows.
Keep going,
and
I'll be back in a
he's
moment.
going with it.
I mean, I wouldn't say that that's a matter of him not being intelligent enough, though.
That's why I used. Sorry, that's why I said or. I was saying either he knows or he's not intelligent
Oh,
enough.
okay, yeah.
It's just interesting. And in my feedback form, a lot of people really like the Dark Star bluff. For a moment, it's a nice climax. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a fun moment, and it's like probably like some of the best dialogue uh, we've had. Like not the best dialogue, but some of the best dialogue. That scene in particular.
Relitigating the question about septas from the previous Hotah chapter now in chat.
Alright, I'm back.
Welcome.
Alright, what is next on the discussion? Any other criticisms or things that you guys found confusing? Really?
Trying to
Nothing? Do you
think
guys
of
want to
what
end
I
it here?
said. Yeah, I think that's about it. Like, there were a few typos that we had gone over in the Discord, like the misspelling of the one Baratheon and like the extra the and stuff. But
God, we're such bad editors.
yeah,
The
if
worst.
only those editors would actually
Do their
job.
jobs, right?
Yeah, I know.
That's what I've been
You'd
saying.
think, right?
Yep.
I don't know who these editors are, but I think they need to have a
They need
talking
to
to.
get their stuff together.
Yeah, they really need to work on it.
For
They need to-
criticisms, really quick, I do feel like it's a little bit surprising to me that Darkstar is quite his like 110% flamboyant self when he's just talking to Hotah. Like, I feel like he must have the impression that he's like kind of wasting his time throwing all these witticisms out when Hotah is just like, yes, okay, and not like playing off him at all.
He's talking
guess
to
I
a
had the
brick
impression-
wall.
Yeah, so why is he going to the effort? And that's, I guess, he just always talks like this
Yeah.
to
I
everyone.
guess it's bravado.
I think he just likes to hear his own voice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He is
And I
the
think-
watcher over the opal scroll.
I do love that Areo Hotah is literally a brick wall. He has like, I was not there.
And I think-
I did not see. It's so blunt and simple.
I think that's why, like, it's for the reader, and it works because Darkstar is being super braggadocious. We see this stuff go over Arrow's head. It's just fun as readers to be in a position where we know more than the POV, and that's what makes POV writing very fun, is because it can tell us about the POV themselves, even though they're
Mhm.
because when you have a narrator, they're not a character, but when you have a POV, you can grow a character and build.
I agree.
I'm thinking of like the original Sherlock Holmes novels here, where we first have to learn who Watson is as a character before we can even learn who Sherlock Holmes is as a character. And it's through that kind of second person style of writing that we can like see how they play off each other and start to realize where Watson is coming up short as a person, and we grow past him as a reader because we understand him as a character. I don't know.
Yeah. And when the detective does the big showdown and explains everything as dramatically as possible, that's for the reader's benefit, right? It wouldn't actually make sense to progress, the crime
Yeah, and
that
there-
way.
And there's a few stories written. There's a few of the Sherlock Holmes stories that are written from Sherlock's POV, and that's an interesting twist. But that's kind of what I think of, like when I think of the basics of POV writing. I
Sure.
think of Sherlock Holmes, and the point is here we have a much more intelligent character going over the head of a more understood but more simple-minded character, and that's the same dynamic we see in Sherlock Holmes.
Right. I just
And
had a little bit too much of the sense that like he's talking like this for our benefit. There's no real reason for him to talk like this with his current interlocutor. But it's fine. It's fine.
No,
tiny,
I don't
tiny
think that-
little.
I don't think there's a reason. I think the reason is entirely meta, but I think it's excusable because it works.
For sure.
I think it's well within his
And-
character. He seems to like the sound of his own voice. He seems to like talking about how good he is. And he's young and he's confident and he's like a knight and he thinks he should be Sword of the Morning and that he's better than he I think it's fine. I like it. I think he went with it pretty well. And George
What is-
often does characters that just talk about like random, like they go on big long tangents about unrelated things, and it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, what about like Tyrion talking to the Mountain Men sometimes? He seems to
Mhm.
talk a little big
Yeah.
for they're stereotypically barbarians and idiots, and he talks very large, and that's a joy that the reader has, is saying his intelligence contrasted with their more simple or straightforward or deliberate nature. And I guess I shot myself in the foot by bringing up a Hotah Tyrion parallel, but there we go.
I don't get it. What do you mean?
It's undermining his previous point that they had no parallels.
Oh, I think I was AFK when, or I was looking at the chat.
I'm invite a pain.
Okay, yeah, there we go.
Can someone want to head on out? Let's try and limit the number of people.
I can head out. That's okay. I'll leave.
All right, thanks very much. Wiley, you're fantastic. I just want to limit the people talking over each other. Epe, how you doing?
I'm all right. I can shine a light on the Marcella Rosamond fake swap thingy once the other conversation points are done. And
I think we're ready to move on to
Podcasts.
that.
all
Go
right,
ahead.
so just it was brought up earlier. Maybe some people don't quite remember from the first Areo chapter, but basically Balon Swan and Scrape Sword, they seem to be looking for, a girl and a septa headed out of Dorne. And Areo and Obara sort of pick up on this through hearsay, and Obara obviously draws the wrong conclusion that they're looking for Tyene and Marcella when in fact they're looking for Eglantine and possibly the Marcella or Rosamond, because earlier on in the chapter, Balon Swan confirms to or asks Areo about like 4 different people who seem to have gone missing. Rosamond, Eglantine, and then 2 men at arms. Like they're not there. Balon Swan has a list of people who departed from King's Landing to Dorne, and then he's cross-referenced that with the people who have left Dorne for King's Landing, and it seems that these 4 people are gone. They're unaccounted for, so that's where the sort of, I believe Preston, it's one of his things that the Marcella, or the girl in the desert was not Marcella, but in fact that was Rosamond.
Yeah.
And Ares Oakheart went on a suicide mission, so that because he saw himself as some kind of a point of failure, he could be taken in hand and tortured and questioned. If he got himself killed, the secret would die with him.
Marcella is most safe if no one knows quite where she is.
Yeah,
That's
right,
also
so-
something that Darkstar alludes to. Like he says that
He straight up
yeah,
says
he
it.
basically killed him by you, kill himself by you.
Yeah, well, he
Yeah,
says
the
that
stuff about
the desert girl wasn't
Tyene.
Marcella.
That's Obara drawing the wrong conclusion and like deducing from the information, but just not
Yeah.
knowing enough.
Yeah, indeed.
So where do we think
So
Marcella
that
is?
was. Well,
Doran's got it.
that depends, because a lot of people seem to disagree on this. That the credibility of the girl in the desert theory. I think
Well, Preston
the
swapped
simplest
them,
thing,
for sure.
like I guess the like most straightforward thing is that, without any of this fuckery, is that basically Ares Oakheart and the gang left for the desert. They had Rosamond with them, and meanwhile Marcella, who was, you as the reader think is actually Rosamond, Marcella, Eglantine, and these 2 men at arms, they just bailed out of Sunspear and headed out.
I do wonder how they could get away though when Doran
Well,
already
yeah.
knows about the plot in advance.
That's where we get into the quagmire, is the details. How could they cross the desert? How could they, there's a million.
Yeah. If he knows that they're leaving tomorrow, then how
Yeah.
is he ever gonna how is he not gonna have eyes on
I can
all the
play
people?
devil's advocate and say maybe they had this sort of lucky chance to escape, because Doran knew that that Arion and Eris are going to be going to the desert, so he sort of had lax security to begin with, so that they could sneak out the girl in the desert. And at the same time, Eglantine and these men at arms also took out the real Marcella, and they all just sort of got away because the guards were told to, not.
Yeah, maybe there was a
Not stop him.
gigantic snafu there, but he could just also still have her, right? They could all those 4 people that were mentioned could just be chilling in a tower that Doran put them in right now.
That's true. Yeah, that's where it sort of gets like sort of outside my comprehension, like what would that lead to, and stuff like that. It's definitely a cool theory that but that sort of divergence is like it goes out of my reach. I can no longer stick.
Oh, we don't know either.
Yeah.
Meredith in the chat is asking, when did the swap happen? And I'm pretty sure it would have happened on the boat to Dorne. They swapped them in case of like pirate attacks or whatever, and then never swapped them back.
The Preston argument is really the lack of a swap back.
Mm.
Does Doran know?
Good question.
Yeah, I mean, even if Doran didn't know that the 4 people included the real Marcella and not Rosamund, he wouldn't have gotten rid of them, right? He would still have them regardless.
Meredith says the never swap back doesn't work. Why is there no ambiguity in the Savassi scene in the Ares chapter? Preston argues that there is ambiguity, and that the specific phrasing of she had her lips parted, she was doing this, she was doing that, she was a few years older, that George is being exceptionally vague on which girl was playing Savassi against Tristane.
I think that's a really fair criticism, but in this fan fiction, it's just canon that Desert Girl was Rosamund. Like, we've already passed that point.
Yeah,
So-
that's my point as well.
Exactly.
Is that
Yeah.
I don't
Hey,
really
guys,
have-
this is starting to get a bit over my pay grade. Time, are you gonna mod over this if I mosey out?
Yeah, I can do all the important mod things and act like I'm in charge.
The authority.
Oh,
Yeah,
You're all
okay.
Thanks,
under my
Lord
command
Varlos.
now.
You guys take it easy.
Take it.
That does open
that
up
was
another
basically
spot if anyone else wants to join in. Meredith or VCR, or I'm seeing some unfamiliar faces in here as well. So
Hop in if you want. You can raise your hand and I'll send you an invite. But what were we talking about?
Preston's theory is so weak. I'm saying that in saying that there's ambiguity, and I don't know. I do think there's something there, and like if there was ambiguity in the Savassi game part, I think George should have been more explicit. But there could be something there.
It's just what people have already said. Like, this is established canon for the project. Like,
Yeah.
Debating the canonicity of these things in actual ASWAF versus the Sweet Robin fanfiction are like 2 different camps.
Yeah, it's beyond the scope of this conversation.
Yeah,
we're just talking about the
that-
fanfic.
That was exactly
Yeah.
my point as well. I only wanted to join in to explain to Nick, because it seemed to
Yeah.
me that
Thank you.
he wasn't caught up on that. But yeah, that's the
But
Preston.
It is
Preston
a little
thing.
confusing, and I do think Preston might assume a little too much, or is catering to his fans a bit too much there, because not everyone could understand fully. Like, wait a second, Marcella's been body swapped? What? Like, that could come out of the blue for some people.
Yeah, you have to have watched the Areo Kart video yesterday in order to really be up on it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that, and I find it a compelling and I find it a compelling theory. I just find that Preston wants there to be a Dornish master plan so badly that he will not force some of this stuff, but see a little bit more of it where there is. Like, yes, there's ambiguity, but George leaves ambiguity through the nature of POVs being mistaken in things, and also the nature of how his writing style works. He just leaves all these open doors. What the extent of the actual Dornish master plan is, it's likely much smaller than what Preston is working towards in this canon. But that said, it's still quite enjoyable, and
Doran-
it's still something that has basis in the actual book. It's not like it's coming out of nowhere.
Doran does say that he's been working towards Tywin Lannister's death and destruction for like 14 years. Like, there is a
No, there
Dornish
is a
master
big-
plan.
There is a big Dornish master plan. It's just the scale of it is the question. I mean, there's clearly a Dornish plan though, and it's clearly it was a very fun reveal when that Quentin was it the Quentin POV or was the Ariane POV where he kind of is like, "You think
Areo.
I'm an idiot, but
I
here's."
think that's Hotah chapter.
I don't remember which
Pretty
one
sure
it
it's
is, but he
Ariane.
reveals just a few of the things that he's set in place, and it's like, oh wow, there's something really big happening there. It's fun writing.
isn't Arius Oakheart the only person who knew where the real Marcella is? He might have thought that he was the only one who knew. But it could also be the case that, unknown to Arius Oakheart, as soon as he rode out with Arion into the desert, Doran snatched up Marcella, the real one, and so Arius Oakheart died for nothing. He would have no way of knowing.
We got a lively discussion in the chat. I like that.
The chat's really going.
Yeah. I wish I could show
I'm
it.
running out of ground that I wanted to cover.
Same.
Yeah, Ule, I'm actually disagreeing with you quite a bit. I do think the plan that Doran says is his plan, like having Viserys come on over and become and marry Arianne, I think that's complete nonsense. I think Doran's a liar. And I think we're going to be probably doing House of Dane soon. I mean, we're Darkstar's there and going to oh god, yeah. I think probably Areo Hotah 3 is probably going to be heading to either in prison or just heading to Starfall.
So to add on to that, the point in chat with making House Dane more interesting, I felt very similarly. A lot of the drafts had some fun House Dane lore, and Preston in the initial outline had even said that he wanted some Sword of the Morning, build up House Dane lore, and then in this final product we got like nothing really.
There was a
House
few
Dane
little
lore.
tidbits. I don't remember what they were though.
There's a few little tidbits, and then they talk about this weird marriage thing to get Blackhaven into the Dornish Alliance, and I'm
Says
like,
his cousin
why
hates him.
It's like, I want like Sword of the Morning, like LML level mythology of like falling stars and Azor Ahai and what is that sword made out of?
How
Yada,
my
yada,
family
yada.
came from across the Sunset Sea
And how many
and that
Danes
sort
are
of
there?
thing.
Yeah, like all this cool stuff about House Dane. We know so little. Like, how
I think
how are
Preston
they
doesn't want to
branched
box
out? And
himself in.
I don't think that's boxing himself in though. You could still keep gardening. You could grow that, like, because Dane, we just I don't know. I'm a big Dane fan, so heck, that's my Discord color. So it's just I don't know. It was certainly a missed opportunity, and it's a little confusing because it's something we saw in the drafts. But oh well, can't have everything.
All right. I'm thinking last chance to bring up any topics before we wrap up.
Yeah, I have one.
Hmm?
Sir Timon in the desert. He's the lone survivor, I guess, from the attack on the Lannister forces. Any chance
Yeah.
this guy could survive out there? I mean, the chapter says there's no well for 100 miles around. I
Huh.
would question that because just the like the previous night they were at that place. Was it Hellholt or whatever? I can't remember what the castle was, but they were at a banquet just the night before. So there is like a castle within a day's ride. Now, is that too long for a guy on foot to make it there?
Yeah, he could make it. I wonder what his role would be though.
Well,
I mean,
this is
obviously,
something I thought about. The idea that, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, go on.
But that he survived this attack. This is like an act of war, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if he gets out, or if any, I mean, they killed some importantly named. Were
They killed a
two Slints there,
Kingsguard.
weren't there?
Yeah, there was
like-
also Merlin Craycall and the Slint Boys, and then I
Slint
guess the
Boys
rest.
too and stuff. It's only a matter of time before, right? Like, that gets out somehow. I mean, you can't just kill people and no one noticed, especially.
Well, you can
if
blame it
they're
on
Highborn.
Darkstar.
Yeah,
You can
unless
blame
you
it on
find-
Not if
Darkstar.
there's a witness.
But it's an act of war, right? Like,
Yeah,
and does that fit into Doran's plan? Like,
I don't think so.
I can't see how prematurely going to war is going to fit into Doran's plan. I know the Lannisters aren't in the best position to carry out a war at this time, especially if they're going to lose the Tyrells to the Aegon cause or something, and Stannis is going to, just sweep in and be the true king. We'll see what happens. But
Wait, can you say
point
that again?
is, Lannisters are.
Did you think that Doran? Did you say Doran's going to join Aegon?
No, I said that's possible. I meant the Tyrells. The Tyrells could lose to the Aegon cause somehow or join up with him. We just don't know. Point is, Lannisters aren't really in the best position militarily right now. Even then, though, it can't be advantageous for them to have this act of war happen right now.
My thinking is that Areo, Quentin, and Arianne are going to force Doran into war, and that'll be how they mess up Doran's master plan of not sending his men off to war.
Yeah, I guess that's possible.
I'm not sure who he joined. Alrighty then. I think that concludes today's meeting. Where's my little gimmick conclusion thing? Well, that concludes today's proceedings. I thank you all for your wise counsel. The Crown will consider all that you have said here today. This council will meet again in 1 week's hence to discuss the Battle of Steel. Those big 3 chapters. Talk about that and have some good debates there. Thank you all in the audience, both in this chamber and beyond. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks so much for having us.
Huzzah.